with me, your man, Louie T. Welcome to the 2020 NFL Draft Wrap-Up Series, where your man, Louie T, aims to break down all 32 teams in the National Football League's 2020 NFL Draft using our brand new grading scale 1 through 5, 5 being the highest grade a pick can receive, 1 being the lowest grade a pick can receive. We will go through each and every single team's draft, add up all of the scores from each pick, divide by the number of picks, which will then yield us an overall grade for that team's draft. You can find the grading scale down in the description in the below this video. So check that out if you want to know what the actual grading scale is. And so this is the U-Pick format. So simply be the first, not the second, not the 52nd, the first person to leave a comment in the comment section of this and future videos in this series stating 2 things: the phrase next and the team you'd like to see next. Now, really don't care how you phrase it as long as I can tell what team you're talking about and the phrase next is in there. Some examples: Pitt next, Steel Curtain next, Steelers next, Pittsburgh next. You get where I'm going with this. As a matter of fact, the next team up in the series is none other than the Pittsburgh Steelers. This is a team that did not own a first-round pick in the 2020 NFL Draft. But look, let's be honest with ourselves. They had a first-round pick this year. His name was Minkah Fitzpatrick. He played outstanding for them last season. After making the trade during the season to get him, he came over and made a huge difference. And you got to think about it this way. He's only going into his 3rd season in the league, so you essentially have him for 3 more years on his rookie deal. So essentially, you got your first-round pick in the form of Minkah Fitzpatrick. So I don't think any Steelers fans are going to be upset at the fact that they got a guy like Minkah Fitzpatrick and had to spend a first-round pick to do so. But they did make the picks that they did have in the draft, the 6 remaining picks that they made in the 2020 NFL Draft count. And so we'll go through those picks quickly, break those down, get in, get out, and get out of here. So let's talk about the Pittsburgh Steelers and what they were able to accomplish in the 2020 NFL Draft. Let's take a look at their draft picks. And we start with their first selection in this draft. In the 2nd round, 49th overall pick, wide receiver out of Notre Dame, Chase Claypool is the selection. I've got my breakdowns, my written breakdowns of each and every single one of these players in this draft. So let's start with that of Chase Claypool. So 6'4", 238 pounds, ran a 4.42 40, kind of lit up the combine, to be honest with you. A lot of people were trying to put him into the tight end box because they saw how much he weighed, they saw how much he had bulked up, and the assumption was, oh, he's doing this to become a tight end. And that wasn't the case at all. In fact, Chase Claypool said that it really was water weight gain, and that I don't think he's going to play at 238. I think he's ultimately going to be somewhere in that 230-pound neighborhood. Doesn't matter. If he's running a 4.42 at 238 and that was water weight gain, and let's say that water weight gain put on a couple hundredths of a second, you could be talking about a guy that's running a sub 4.4 at the end of the day. Whatever the case may be, I'm a Notre Dame Fighting Irish fan, so I can tell you that I've watched just about every game Chase Claypool played in, and I don't think he's even reached his apex as a football player. The best is yet to come, and that's scary because this guy is pretty solid already heading into the league. 66 catches, 1,037 yards, and 13 touchdowns in 13 games for the Fighting Irish in 2019. In his career, 150 grabs, 2,159 yards, 19 touchdowns in 50 games. So you see most of his damage in his career came in 2019 after guys like Miles Boykin and the likes had already departed Notre Dame. I had a day 2 2nd round grade on him. He was my 9th rated wide receiver in this draft. So he went right about where he was supposed to go in this draft. Remember, 6 wide receivers went in the 1st round. So he was right in the neighborhood that he was supposed to go. And I think this is tremendous value where you got him. Let's look at his strengths. Size, obviously 6'4", 238. I don't have to really tell you much more than that. Speed, 238 pounds, running a 4.42 40. That is tremendous. And he's a build-up speed guy. He's not one of those guys that, 2 steps and he's full stride, fifth gear, ready to rock and roll. He's not KJ Hamler or, Henry Ruggs, where it doesn't take much. Those guys rev it up really quick. He's got to build up his speed, but once he gets to top speed, look out. Catch radius, obviously at 6'4", this guy has a massive catch radius, can extend away from his frame to go and get the football, has tremendous body control. That's the next strength, is that he is able to contort his body, change the way he is going after the football in mid-flight to go and get the ball. So really good body control. And you watch some of the catches he was able to make at Notre Dame, and they're eye-popping for a guy his size. Solid hands. He's one of those guys that you trust throwing it to him on 3rd and 8, 3rd and 9, needing a big play. Ben's not going to have a problem going to chase Claypool in a really clutch situation if need be. Tracks the football very well. For a big guy running down the field, sometimes they find it hard to track the football. This is a guy that sees it in the air and goes and gets it in the air. Does a really good job of tracking the football in flight, especially the deep balls way down the field. Legit deep threat. Again, as a Notre Dame fan, I watched him run past collegiate defenses week after week after week, and it's not like Notre Dame was playing the best of competition. I will admit that. The Notre Dame Fighting Irish, from year to year, their schedules vary because they're an independent. They don't play in a conference. So, one year Navy could be good. The next year they could stink. Boston College could be good one year. They could stink the next year. And these are the types of teams they play on a year-to-year basis more times than not. So it's not like he was running past quality corners each and every single week. But I don't care. You just eat the competition up that they put in front of you. And each week he had a napkin. He had a fork and a knife, and he went to work on secondaries, running past these guys on a consistent basis. Run after the catch. Again, he's not a make-you-miss type of guy, but because of his speed, he can outrun angles, so he can get you yards after the catch, but he's more of a physical presence with the ball in his hands. If you want to come with a shoulder, if you want to come with a half-assed arm tackle, he's going to run through that and continue to get yards after the catch. Physicality, I kind of mentioned that, but also more so when you talk about physicality, it's his ability to block. This guy is physical, man. He will take your ass and put you on the bench if you're not careful. If you're one of these corners that doesn't want any smoke in the run game and you're just looking to buddy-buddy with the receiver out there, this is not the guy you want in front of you because he doesn't play games in the run game. He's looking to take you out of the picture and really allow his running backs to maximize their runs down the field. Special teams value. This was one of the better wide receivers on the special teams side of things in college football. So right away, Chase Claypool comes in. He's your best gunner on your football team more likely than not. And at 6'4", 240 essentially, I think he's going to end up being more along the lines of 230. It doesn't matter. Running a sub 4.4 potentially, right around 4.4, he's going to be one hell of a gunner running down the field. So he offers you that special teams value. I don't anticipate him staying on special teams very long. I think he's going to be there maybe a year, possibly 2, before they realize he's too valuable to be running down, covering punts, and going to end up being one of your better wide receivers on your football team. Weaknesses. Would like to see him be more consistent on 50-50 balls. And what do I mean by more consistent? Time his jump better. I think a lot of times he's a little overzealous, sees the ball in the air, wants to go attack it, but it's not time for you to leave your feet yet. And he jumps up. And now when you do that, when you jump too early, you give a shorter defender an opportunity to get in the play and make a play on the football. If you go and get the football at its highest point and you're 6'4" with a long wingspan, and you time your jump right and time it up and sync it up correctly, that a 5'10", a 6-foot corner can't do anything with you unless this guy's jumping through the roof. So again, and I'd like to see him be stronger at the point of catch, with stronger hands, with guys raking at his arms in 50-50 situations. Look, they already know they can't jump with you. They already know that they're at a size disadvantage. So they're looking to rake at the arms. They're looking to try to strip the football out of your hands and get an incompletion. I'd like to see him be a little bit stronger, muscle up on these guys. He's a big dude, as we already know. So I'd like to see him just be a little bit more physically imposing at the point of catch in these 50-50 situations. Separation at the next level. is a question mark for him. A lot of people want to know, can he separate consistently? He's not the quickest guy. Again, he's fast, but he's got to build up that speed. Will he be able to separate consistently underneath? A lot of crossing routes. When you watch him at Notre Dame, a lot of crossing routes underneath for him. A lot of run after the catch where they're running shallow crossers. He gets it at 3 yards away from the line of scrimmage. There's no one around him, and he's able to run for 15 additional yards after catching the football because he's able to build up his speed. That's not how it's going to be for him at the next level unless it's 3rd and 19. They'll give you the underneath crosser and then rally up and tackle. Will he be able to separate on a slant? Will he be able to separate on a dig route, on a comeback? Will he be able to run the back shoulder fade and create enough separation away from a defender with his body? Will he use it well enough? We'll see. These are all question marks that people have about Chase Claypool at the next level. Release off the line of scrimmage, it's not the best. And I'll take it a step further. There were times where at Notre Dame, they would send him in motion just to make sure that teams couldn't get a jam off on him. I'd like to see him be a little bit better off the line of scrimmage, especially with teams knowing how fast you are. And some people may not actually know how fast you are, may sleep on your speed, thinking that you're just a big guy and not actually knowing that you can run. They may try to come up and challenge you and really be aggressive with you at the line of scrimmage. I'd like to see him improve his release and then make people pay by then running by that corner that thought, oh, he's just a big, slow wide receiver. He's a big guy, so let me get up in his airspace and really make him uncomfortable at the line of scrimmage. Beat him off the line of scrimmage, get up the field, and make a play. And route tree was limited at Notre Dame. Again, he was generally running either a 9-ball or he was running a crosser, a dragger across the field. Every now and again, you'd get a deep post, but for the most part, he wasn't running an extensive route tree at Notre Dame, and he didn't need to. Again, the level of competition wasn't the greatest, and he's so big, he was so physically imposing, and he had the speed to match that he overwhelmed a lot of his defenders that he was playing against. So I would like to see him develop that, and I think that will come in time as well. So in the second round, 49th overall pick, Chase Claypool for me is a 4. This is a really good pick for the Steelers. I didn't anticipate them going after receiver this high in the draft. However, I did think that they needed to add receiver at some point. This was such a deep draft class of receivers that I thought they could have done this a little bit later on and maybe attacked different positions at this point. But this was a guy that was high on their draft board. They get him at 49. It's a great spot to get him. And his comp for me is Miles Boykin, another guy that was from Notre Dame that was drafted in your division by the Baltimore Ravens a season ago. I actually think he could be better than Miles Boykin. I think the upside for him is a little bit greater. We'll see what happens with Chase Claypool as we move on to the next selection in this Steelers draft. 3rd round, 102nd pick overall, edge rusher out of Charlotte. Alex Highsmith is the selection. 6'3", 248 pounds, 33-inch arms, ran a 4.7 flat at the combine. 21.5 tackles for loss in 2019 to go with 14 sacks. 1 forced fumble, 3 pass breakups in 13 games. For his career, 46 tackles for loss, 20 sacks, 3 forced fumbles, 5 pass breakups in 48 games. So those are some gaudy numbers, especially when you look at his last 2 seasons at Charlotte when he really got acclimated to becoming an edge rusher. This was a guy that really started to turn it up. He was a former walk-on at Charlotte and really worked himself into a draftable prospect as an edge rusher. I had a 4th round grade on him. You guys took him in the 3rd round, so a little bit earlier than I would have selected him, but I understand why, and let's talk about why. And this was a big need, I thought, for the Steelers coming into this draft, especially with Bud Dupree. Bud Dupree being on a franchise tag. I don't know if he's going to be around after this next upcoming season. You're going to need to be able to replace him with someone. This may be the guy waiting in the wings. Strengths. Slipperiness and ability to slither into the backfield. You don't get 46 career tackles for loss. He had 20 in 2018. You don't get that kind of production, all right, if you're not able to be slippery or you don't have some kind of dominant trait that gets you into the backfield on a consistent basis. This guy was a nuisance in his conference, consistently getting into the backfield and really disrupting plays. Conference USA had no answer for Alex Highsmith at times. In specific games, he was just a game wrecker. You know, I'm an ODU alum. He destroyed the Monarchs this past year. 4.5 sacks, 5 tackles for loss in that game. A forced fumble as well. He was just ridiculous in that game. They had no answer. They could not block him, and he has that ability to get into the backfield. He's slippery. He can make himself skinny, get into the backfield. He's very crafty. A lot of things to like here with Alex Highsmith, and one of those things is his slipperiness and his ability to slither into the backfield. He's a professional pass rusher. He's one of those guys I call a professional pass rusher. Just knows how to get to the quarterback. And the thing that I love is he's equipped with a bevy of moves right out of the packaging. You know, you open this guy up, and he may not come included with the batteries to get into the backfield to stop the run consistently or set a physical edge. Those may not be included inside the package when you open it up. All right, right off the gate. You know, it's one thing to beat a Conference USA left tackle and get into the backfield. It's another thing to beat an NFL tackle and get into the backfield and for a tackle for loss. But what he does come equipped with, what you will open the package and see right away, is that this guy can get to the quarterback, and he's got a bunch of moves to do so. His toolbox is full. His move Rolodex is plentiful. Speed rush, right off the bat. He can bend and dip around the edge to shorten that corner as well. So that also comes with the arsenal of his speed rush. Crossover. It's a nasty crossover. He sets guys up by going outside, then comes back inside. I watched him with a beautiful Euro step. My goodness, that Euro step was nasty, where he set a tackle up. He didn't know if he was coming or going. He hit him with the Ginobili, and that guy was lost all in the sauce. So he has a bevy of moves. Then he's got a secondary spin move. When all of the stuff that I just talked about doesn't work, and that quarterback thinks he's going to step up, secondary spin move right into a quarterback. He falls right into a sack. So he's got the timing down. He understands how to set tackles up. He's got a rush plan, and he's got a bunch of moves to throw at a tackle to have his head spinning. I love that about him more so than anything else right out of the gate with Alex Highsmith. Can bend around the edge to shorten the corner. I mentioned that already, but that's something that you can't take for granted because not all guys are capable of turning the corner and then bending at a 45-degree angle and being able to shorten that corner, stick their foot in the ground, and flatten their way to the quarterback. When they run that arc and they go too far up the field, that tackle is able to recover, push them around the pocket, allow the quarterback to step up, deliver the football. When you can shorten that corner by dipping and then making a sharp beeline to the quarterback, that's going to get you there more times than not. He's able to do that. High level of production the last 2 seasons. You cannot dismiss what this guy has done and his growth and maturation as a football player from his freshman and sophomore seasons to his junior and senior campaigns. He was outstanding the last 2 seasons at Charlotte. Really took a jump up in that junior season from a tackle for loss standpoint. Like I mentioned, only 3.5 sacks last season, or 2018, excuse me, but it was 20 tackles for loss. That's when he started to really figure some things out. And then the tackle for loss numbers continued to be consistent, but the sack numbers rose to 14 in this past season. Now, some of those numbers were elevated in a couple of ball games, most notably the ODU game, as I mentioned. You take away a 4.5 sack performance there, and now you're talking about a season where it's just 9.5. You can't take that game away. He was dynamic. He was outstanding, but the 14 sacks, little elevated, a little bit ballooned from the ODU games, and there were a couple other games where he had 2.5 sacks. You take some of those games out of the mix, and maybe not as even a distribution of sacks as you would like, but he did get a sack versus Clemson when he played against upper echelon competition. He was not afraid of the moment. So weaknesses. If he doesn't win immediately against the run, he doesn't win at all. He's one of those guys that I've seen him numerous times run himself right out of the play. Tackle allows him to run right up the field because he knows that this run is coming right at him. And if he runs himself 5 yards up the field, all they're going to do is just run right inside of him. And I saw that happen to him a ton of times versus Clemson. When you watch him, there are times where he just gets stuck. If he doesn't win with quickness right off the snap, able to knife into the backfield, he just gets blocked and he doesn't get off fast enough to make an impact on the play. So he's going to have to get stronger and a little. And speaking of which, He needs to get bigger and functionally stronger. And I think that's part of the reason you take him now, because he doesn't have to play a bunch of snaps. If everyone stays healthy, if TJ Watt stays healthy, if Bud Dupree stays healthy, he's not going to have to play a ton of snaps right out of the gate. They're going to get him in there. They're going to get his feet wet, but he's not going to be looked upon as a guy that they need to contribute right away. It's going to allow him to build up his body, to get stronger, to learn the rigors of the NFL. And then I think he'll be even better come his sophomore season in the NFL. But right away, I think he needs to get stronger. I think he's 248 now. It'd be great to see him get to 256 or so, have that be his playing weight, put on about 8 pounds of muscle, really, really get firm and be able to set a physical edge in the run game, something that I don't think he was really capable of doing on a consistent basis at Charlotte. And then for me, the final piece of the puzzle, and that the final weakness, is his hands. He didn't use his hands. It even benefit him in the run game. I'm not even talking about from a pass rush standpoint, which if he were able to use his hands as a pass rusher, oh my God, with all the things that he's already doing as a pass rusher, it would take him to the next level. He'd be in another stratosphere in terms of his ability to get to the quarterback. I mean, if he used his hands, and he'll get some hand usage work, working alongside a guy like TJ Watt, who's a master at using his hands right now, I think it's going to only benefit him if he can find a way to use his hands. It will really help him in the run game where he really struggles. And so I think his hands are the last piece of the puzzle right now. He's lacking in that department. I'd like to see him find a way to start using his hands better, both in the run game and the pass game. But right now, for me, in the third round, 102nd pick overall, Alex Highsmith for me is a 3. I comp him to Shaq Barrett, a guy that, early on in his career with the Denver Broncos, undrafted out of Colorado State. I always liked Shaq Barrett. I thought he was a really unheralded backup edge rusher off the bench for the Broncos. Remember, back in 2015 when they won the Super Bowl, Shaq Barrett was one of those guys coming off the bench for them. He finally gets out of Denver, out of the shadow of Von Miller and some of those other guys, gets to Tampa Bay, and he blew up last year, 19.5 sacks for Shaq Barrett. I think Alex Highsmith has that kind of capability down the road. But as of right now, I think you're getting a guy that's raw, that needs some more fine-tuning from a run perspective, run defense perspective. You're talking pass rusher, this guy, I think he could do some damage. And it wouldn't shock me if he had an 8.5 sack season in his rookie campaign. He's that skilled as a pass rusher. We move on to the next draft pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers in this draft. And it's the 4th round, 124th pick overall. Running back out of Maryland, Anthony Mcfarland Jr. is the selection. 5'8", 208 pounds. I looked at the Steelers website, and they had him listed at $193, which I can believe that. I think he might have bulked up a little bit for the combine, and he's more of a sub 200-pound back. And that's fine if that's what he is. And his game suggests that he's a sub 200-pound back, to be honest with you. But he ran a 4.44 to Moses Malone 4.44 at the combine. 114 carries for 614 yards and 8 touchdowns in 2019 to go along with 17 catches for 126 yards in 1 score. In his career, 245 carries for 1,648 yards in 12 scores, 24 receptions for 199 yards in 1 score in 23 games. Dealt with some injuries in 2019, but I think if you're a fan of the Steelers, where you need to go with him is back to 2018. We all know the Ohio State game. That's when he jumped onto my radar, was last year, watching a bunch of tape, watching that Ohio State-Maryland game. The Terps should have won that game last year. They let Ohio State off the hook, and he was one of the stars of that football game. So if you really want to see Anthony Mcfarland Jr. in all of his splendor, that's the game you go to. Midday 3 pick is what I had him listed as. More 5th round for me. You took him in the 4th. Have no problems with that. He was my number 16 rated back in this draft. So right around where he was supposed to go, maybe a little bit sooner than I would have taken him. I'll give you my comp for him a little bit later on. His strengths, speed and acceleration are the first things that jump off the table at you. Especially, again, when you go to that Ohio State game, that's the one that I think does it for everyone. If you're looking for Anthony Mcfarland and all that he encompasses and what he brings to the table, that's the game you go to there. And you see the speed and acceleration. I mean, you had runs of like 80-something, 70-something, and another like 60 or 50-plus yard run. I mean, it was 3 runs of over, I can tell you this, it was 3 runs of over 50-plus yards in that game, and 2 of them were 70-plus. I mean, he was ridiculous. I think he had damn near 300 yards rushing in that game, if I'm not mistaken, like 295 or something crazy like that, and 3 scores. So he was outstanding in that game, and the speed and acceleration to run away from Ohio State defenders tells you all you need to know. Toughness. He's a tough little cookie. Now, he's not a big guy, as I mentioned, 5'8", probably like a $193 or 95 somewhere in there. Not a overly big guy, but he's a tough dude. All right, and he gutted out some injuries in 2019. Still only missed 1 game, so he's a tough guy. Don't underestimate his toughness. Quickness. He does have quickness, and that allows him to maximize some of these runs. His ability to dart to the outside after starting a run inside. He does have a nasty habit that we'll talk about a little bit later on. That's one of his weaknesses, but his quickness is definitely a strength and one of his better attributes, along with vision and patience. His vision to be able to cut things to the outside and see it before it happens. Again, it's what the elite home run hitting backs are able to do. See that cutback lane, or see that ability to get to the outside where you can then open up and use that faux speed. He sees it, gets there, and's got the speed to outrun some angles. We call the kind of speed that this guy has angle beating speed. All right, he's got angle beating speed where you could have a great angle, but if you're running a 4.6, 4.40, he's going to outrun your angle more times than not. And then the patience to set up blocks, you know. Sometimes with guys that have speed, they're so impatient. They want to hit it. They want to go much faster than slow. They just want to hit it as fast as they can. And you got to know when to hit the brakes. You got to know when to drive the speed limit and then accelerate. All right. And he is capable of setting up blockers so that they can make that block, and then all of a sudden he explodes off their ass and gets to the outside. So has this vision, the patience, and the quickness to take advantage of those things when they appear. Weaknesses, lack of experience. Now, I could also, in the same breath, say that that's a strength. There's a lot of mileage left on the odometer. Like, it's a low odometer number for Anthony Mcfarland Jr. because he split carries. He was never a guy that was getting, 200-300 carries in one season. So lack of experience, not a ton of playing time at Maryland. He only played for 2 years essentially at Maryland. All right. So it's not a lot of experience here for him in the backfield. This could have been a strength. Compact frame, low center of gravity, low to the ground, but also at the same token, you're south of 200 pounds. It's a grown man's game, and so a lot of times I don't think he wants to smoke inside. He'd much rather take whatever action is on the outside, and sideline's his best friend. If I need to, I can take my talents out of bounds and not take a shot. So while his frame is compact, and that's a good thing normally, he's also a smaller, thin-framed back. Compact frame probably isn't the right word, the right phrase there. Because that usually for me is a good thing. He's got more of a smaller frame, and I think that's more along the lines of where I'm going with that. Tendency to want to bounce everything for the home run. That's the thing I was referencing earlier. One of my biggest knocks on him, he wants to bounce everything to the outside. He's looking for that home run ball. And the problem is sometimes you just got to hit it up in there and get your 4. If you try to bounce it outside, that 4 that was there is now 1, because now you're stringing it out. Now a guy is able to come up, make a tackle, and all of a sudden, instead of it being 3rd and 6, because you got 4 on 2nd and 10, now it's 3rd and 9, and that changes dramatically what the defense does and what you call as a play caller. So I'd like to see him sometimes not look to bounce it outside and just take what's there. Pass pro, he's just too feeble in the pass department as a protector. He's a small guy. Somebody coming at him 200 miles an hour, that's 220 pounds. He's not a guy I want standing up to a linebacker that's 240 pounds coming straight at him. He just can't hold up in those types of situations. Lack of receiving productivity. I don't think he's a guy that is a natural pass catcher. That's not to say he can't do it. But I don't think that's something that's one of his glaring attributes at this point. Maybe that's something he grows into in a role that he becomes more comfortable with at the next level. And then more outrun than make you miss. He doesn't have a ton of wiggle. You know, for a guy with that kind of speed and his size, I want you making some guys miss out in space, and that's really not his thing. He's more of a, I'm going to just try to outrun you, and if I can, great. If I can't, you might push me out of bounds. You might clip my ankle or something. I'd like to see him make some guys miss. I don't think that's really in his DNA. He also got a couple of things on the Carfax. I'm going to knock these out real quick. Missed his senior year of high school with a broken leg, which pretty much saw him full redshirt his first season on the Maryland campus to fully heal that broken leg, which is why he only really played 2 years of college ball. And then he had an ankle sprain that hampered him in 2019. So you're essentially talking about one season where he was really healthy in 2018, where he did much of his damage. So that's something to consider. And then he's got 4 career fumbles. He had 3 in 2018 when he was actually healthy, lost 1, and 1 in 19. So that's something else to keep in mind too. But solid pickup here for a Steelers team that doesn't have a ton of speed at the running back position. This is actually a really good pickup for the Steelers here in the 4th round. 124th pick overall. As you can see on the screen, Anthony Mcfarland Jr. for me is a 3. I liken him to J.J. Arrington. I don't know if you guys remember J.J. Arrington, running back for the Arizona Cardinals once upon a time. Guy that was small, compact, just like Anthony Mcfarland, could run just like Anthony Mcfarland, was more of a 3rd down back, which is what I expect Anthony Mcfarland to be in this league. I think J.J. Arrington, coming out of Cal, could catch it a little bit better than Anthony Mcfarland Jr. Can at this point, but that doesn't mean he won't develop the ability to catch it out of the backfield a little bit better at the next level. So that's going to do it for him as we move on to our next draft pick for the Pittsburgh Steelers, 4th round, 135th pick overall. Offensive lineman out of Louisiana Lafayette, Kevin Dotson is the selection. 6'4", 310 pounds, 33-inch arms, 14 games, 14 starts at right guard for him in 2019. 53 career games, 52 starts at right guard. So a lot of experience there for Kevin Dotson. And I had a 4th round grade on him. You took him in the 4th round. I think it's excellent value here. And really the sweet spot in this draft for guards was the 3rd and the 4th round. Really in those mid rounds, 3rd, 4th, 5th, is where teams really pounced on the guard position in particular. I mean, there were a couple of guys that were drafted as tackles, but are probably going to ultimately be guards in this league that went in the 2nd round, like the guy that played right next to him on what was a dominant right side of the offensive line at Louisiana Lafayette, and Robert Hunt, who was drafted in the 2nd round by the Miami Dolphins. He's probably going to end up kicking inside the guard himself. He may end up staying outside the tackle. We'll see. But for the most part, the guard position itself, guys that played guard in college and are going to play it at the next level, really didn't get touched until we got into the 3rd round. So this is good value here for Kevin Dotson. Strengths, he's a strong man. A big, strong man at 310 pounds. He looks the part of an NFL guard. He's got the strength. He's got the ability to move guys against their will. Speaking of which, run game bully is the next strength. This is what he does best. It's what is going to be his calling card at the next level, is his ability to move guys off the spot, erase the line of scrimmage, and create a new one 2-3 yards up the field. He usually lays hands on a guy initially. They usually fly back a yard or 2. He's got very heavy hands, which is the next pro actually. Heavy hands and initial contact that creates movement. It was fun watching him with that initial contact made because he's more of a pusher than he is a latch and drive guy. He wants to initially jolt you with his hands. And that's exactly what he does. A lot of times when he gets to the 2nd level, gets to a backer or a safety, or he initially contacts that defensive lineman, they usually go backwards a step or 2. And then, you know, that 2nd time around after he's initially jolted you with that first stab, that's when he tries to then lock on if need be. But he's got very heavy hands. Guys feel him. When he touches you, you feel him. You see it on tape. No wasted motion and sound technique. What I mean by no wasted motion, there's no T-step. So a lot of times when offensive linemen are taught going forward, they're not supposed to waste motion. That first step shouldn't be backwards to go forwards. You want guys moving forward. And he's one of those guys when his first movements are going towards the line of scrimmage, not backwards. You'll love that. There's no wasted motion there. Great hand placement. There wasn't one time where I looked at him and said, boy, those hands are way outside the pads. That's an easy holding call. I told you, he's not a latch-on guy. He's a contact you and push you kind of guy. And so his hand placement is usually inside the pads. It's never up around the neck, head area, so you're not worried about hands to the face. A lot of good stuff there. And then great blocking angles too. So he's been taught really well. And really, to be honest with you, he can't afford to take poor angles. He's not a good enough athlete to do so. So I think a lot of this has been embedded in him. Look, you don't have a step to waste, so you can't waste any motion. And you don't have the athleticism to take poor angles, so we need you to be tight on everything you're doing. When you're pulling, I don't need you taking wide angles. I need you to be tight to that left tackle's ass as you pull around so that you can get to that guy sooner. So, and all of that stuff is clean with him. Solid in the pass game. I think he moves well laterally, well enough at least, and has a sturdy punch that keeps guys off balance and at bay. So in the pass game, I think he does a really good job of just keeping the action in front of him. Not many times you see him having to ride a guy around the quarterback. I did see that once or twice late in the final games that I watched, but it wasn't, something consistent where, he was literally having to recover a ton. He usually kept the action in front of him, man. Not a lot of things going on. It was pretty quiet in his neighborhood on most snaps. NFL bloodlines. He's had 2 uncles play in the league. So that's also coursing through his veins. And then experience. I talked about the guy playing in 53 games, starting 52 of them at right guard, which also talks and speaks to the 3 abilities: durability, availability, and accountability. He's got them all. Every week, this guy's going to show up. He's going to do his job, and he's a guy that's going to play through injuries. Don't tell me that in 53 games he wasn't nicked up. But he's an accountable guy, he's a durable guy, and he's a guy that's going to be available each and every single week, and that's something that you cannot discount at the next level. Weaknesses. He's not a tremendous athlete, all right? That is something that you see. Pulling and second-level movements aren't the cleanest. All right, now, when he pulls, he doesn't waste any motion, and it's tight, and usually he gets the job done. But, if you got one of these fast scat backs, because the guy he was blocking for at Louisiana Lafayette was a slower, bigger, plodding back. So it allowed him to get in front and get his block. If you got one of these faster guys that doesn't have patience, it could get ugly on him pulling. So that's something to keep an eye on. He's not David DeCastro. That's for damn sure. I can assure you of that. And he struggles on the backside cutoff sometimes. Man, he tries his hardest to get there, man. He busts his ass trying to get to that backside cutoff. But it's not always the cleanest. And a lot of times he falls down trying to get to that backside cutoff. He's trying so hard. Bless his heart. But he's just not the best athlete. He's a head ducker. And what I mean by that is when he's looking to make contact, he's trying to be so forceful and get as much leverage as he can. He ducks his head. And, you don't want guys doing that. You don't want head duckers. You don't see what you hit. It's easy for you to lose your balance that way. Guys can swim around you. You can miss your target. You can get injured that way. I'd like him to keep his head up, see what he's hitting, but he's definitely a head ducker. That is for sure. Doesn't sustain as much as I would like to see him sustain. Like, this is a guy that, I told you, he likes to push you around. He wants to push you around and bully you that way. And he doesn't sustain his blocks as much as I would like him to do. There are too many times where he pushes a guy, and yeah, he creates 2 or 3 yards of separation between he and that guy, but he pushes him so far away that if the play goes away, that guy ends up going and helping make the tackle down the field. I'd like to see him engage and stay engaged. Would also like to see him look for a little bit more work in the passing game. There are times where he didn't have anybody to block. And he didn't do this all the time. There are instances of him looking for work and going and finding some. Your guy over there at right tackle has his man, but, that doesn't matter. I'm going to go light his ribs up anyway. There are times where he's just kind of looking around, and there's carnage behind him. And some of it is because he didn't help the center who just got beat immediately off the snap. Don't just stand around, head on a swivel. Go help somebody. So that was one play I just laughed because he's like this. And there is carnage ensuing behind him. His center just got beat. And he's still looking around. And shit's going all bad behind him. And you thinking that, he didn't have anything to do. Yeah, he had a lot that he could have done on that play. He did nothing. So I'd like to see him look for work a little bit more. But this guy was named as a first-team AP All-American, the first player to ever be named that for the Louisiana Lafayette Raging Cajuns. So very decorated career for Kevin Dotson in the 4th round, 135th pick overall. Kevin Dotson, for me, is a 4. I think this is a guy that's going to be a starter for you. Maybe not year 1. Maybe he will be in year 1. But one thing's for sure. By year 2, if he's not a starter, he will be a starter. I think this is a starting caliber NFL guard here in the 4th round in Kevin Dotson. So we move on to the next selection in this draft for the Pittsburgh Steelers. And it's the 6th round, 198th pick overall. Safety out of Maryland, Antoine Brooks Jr. is the selection. And seems like the Steelers love them some Maryland, man. Like, you took Sean Davis once upon a time from there. You take Antoine Brooks Jr. We're about to talk about him. You took Anthony Mcfarland Jr. a little bit earlier in this draft. So they might have a little thing about Maryland players. I don't know. Maybe they trust one of their area scouts there, or it's easy when you watching one guy and then you just happen to run into another guy. But whatever the case may be, 5'11", 220, ran a 4.64 40, but plays to me a little bit faster than that on tape. 8.5 tackles for loss, no sacks, no forced fumbles, 5 pass breakups, and 1 interception in 12 games in 2019. For his career, 27.5 tackles for loss, of which 3.5 were sacks, 1 forced fumble, 9 pass breakups, 4 interceptions in 43 contests. Strengths, good stout frame, man. At 5'11", 220, that's a good enough frame to keep you in the box and feel like you can do some damage, and he does. At Maryland, they moved this guy all around, but he did most of his damage in or around the line of scrimmage. We'll talk about that here in a second. But the thing I love about him the most is his next strength. Plays with an infectious energy. Like, this guy, you can tell, loves football, man. He plays the game with a zest and this just ridiculous amount of energy that... How can you not play hard when you watch a guy like Antoine Brooks run around the field? He makes a play, he jumps up, he's excited, he's exasperating. I think he's one of those guys that, if nothing else, you want this guy on your team because he's going to make everyone else around him play football harder. You can't watch this guy and not want to play hard. Aggressive, instinctual downhill attacker. That's when he's at his best. When he's coming downhill, attacking the line of scrimmage. They blitzed him a ton at Maryland. And in some instances, I don't even know if he was supposed to blitz or not, but he was blitzing. They did a lot of things with him at or around the line of scrimmage, as I mentioned already. But when he did his best work, he was coming downhill aggressively, whether he was getting into the backfield, off the edge as a blitzer in a run blitz situation, tackle for loss, or he was blitzing the quarterback coming up the C gap, or coming off the slot and blitzing on a slot blitz. They just had him around the line of scrimmage just being active. That's when he's at his best. Operates well at or around the line of scrimmage. So I just talked about that, and I just gave you some ways in which he did that as a blitzer, attacking the line of scrimmage with a run blitz. Underneath coverage, I think he's solid in that. He can be better. We'll talk about that a little bit later. I watched him back in 2018 as well. They had him quarterback spying a ton. So when you watch him against Texas in that first game of the season, had a nice pick to seal the deal in that game. But he was spying their quarterback much of the game. And he's a threat to run with Sam Ehlinger. And so they essentially said, your job is to spy Sam Ehlinger. Don't let him out of the pocket. And for the most part, he did well with that. There were a couple of times I thought he lost contain, kind of freelanced and lost his way. But for the most part, he did his job adequately. Tackles very efficiently. He's one of those guys that I trust to get people on the ground. Sometimes he can get a little sloppy and just try to throw a shoulder and be physical. But for the most part, he gets guys on the ground. He gets results. Good athleticism. I talked about this guy's ability to jump when he picked off the pass from Sam Ehlinger in 2018, first game of the season versus Texas. He went up and got that one, guys. He can jump. He can leap. And he moves well on the football field. You know, good back pedal. The transitions aren't always the cleanest, but he just got really solid athleticism. There's a burst that he plays with, a really good closing burst. So he's got good athleticism for sure. And then versatility. This is either a plus or a negative for him when you're talking Antoine Brooks Jr. Either you love his versatility or you look at it and say he doesn't have a clean positional fit. He doesn't have a real position. We'll talk about that here in a second. I choose to say that it's versatility, however. You go to his weaknesses, tight hips, which make for slow transitions in man coverage. His back pedal is so effortless. It's clean. But then when he goes to transition out of that back pedal, it's so slow and it's so clunky, and it doesn't match with everything else that you see from him. And so I'm watching slow tight ends get the jump on him on slants that I'm like, why aren't you in this guy's hip pocket? And it's because his transition, he's losing a full step and a half on the transition. Now he should have never been in this position, but he's in the slot versus Devin Duvernay. I get it. It's Devin Duvernay. This guy's running a sub 4.4. Like, he shouldn't be man-to-man 30 yards, 40 yards down the field with Devin Duvernay, but he was right there until he had to transition from back pedal to full-out sprint, and that's when Duvernay just took off on his ass, and next thing you know, there's 4 yards of separation, and Duvernay's making a diving stab in the end zone for a touchdown. So he's got some tight hips, and it makes for a slow transition for him. He's got to limit the hero ball. You know, sometimes he goes outside of what the play calls for him to do. And you know what? Sometimes in order to be a baller, you got to go outside what is asked and required of you on a specific snap. But you also got to make sure that you do your job first and foremost. Before you try to play hero ball, you better make sure you have your damn task at hand taken care of. And when I talk about things like that, I'm talking about against Texas. I told you he was the QB spy on Sam Ehlinger. Well, your job is to make sure Sam Ehlinger doesn't tuck in and run for 15 yards on 3rd and 11. Well, when you decide you're going to blitz because Sam's taking too long with the ball and you're getting antsy, your job isn't to blitz, okay? It's a 3-man rush. He's going to have all day. That's the point. Your job is to make sure that he doesn't tuck in and run. Well, he got antsy, decided he was going to venture up the A-gap. He gets washed by a couple of offensive linemen, and Sam Ehlinger takes off on 3rd and 11 for 15 yards, picks up a first down. Don't do that. Don't try to play hero ball. Do your job. He has to be better as a zone drop defender, especially being an ex-high school quarterback. You'd think that he understands zone concepts and what you have to do to take away a wide receiver. And, you know, I'm watching him against Penn State in 2019, and KJ Hamler's running a little over route, somewhat of a slant. It's more of a like a little over route or so. And he's in zone coverage. There's nobody else in the middle of the field that he needs to be concerned with. KJ Hamler is the only guy that he should be worried about. So at that point, you should be zone matching KJ Hamler, not guarding a patch of grass, but rather the man. All right, he's in your zone and you got no other responsibility. Carry that guy till he gets to the next defender. Instead, he kind of just watches KJ Hamler go right by him and then plays his patch of grass, and then they throw it right to KJ Hamler behind him. And I'm like, dude, you could have prevented that throw. Like, zone and pattern match what's going on right next to you. Don't be a robot here. So he's got to be better in zone coverage. And then the question that I posed, is he a tweener? Is he a safety? Is he a backer? What is he? You know, and I think he didn't have to be either. He could be both. You can move this guy around. So he moved from linebacker to safety after his freshman year. So that kind of gives you a sense of why he was so thick. You know, at 220, that's a big safety. So that's part of it, because more times than not, safeties look like corners now. They're 205, they're 207, they're 203. This guy's 220. So he's kind of got that linebacker mentality, and you see it when in the way he plays because he's so aggressive. He's got that linebacker mentality, but he's playing a safety position. So he's pretty interesting. You can do some things with Antoine Brooks Jr. Here in the 6th round, 198th pick overall. Antoine Brooks Jr. for me is a triple or a 3. I like this guy, and I think he's going to help you on special teams right off the bat. All right, right out of the gate, he helps you on special teams, and I think eventually he weasels his way onto the football field and starts to help you in that capacity moving forward. And then we wrap up this Steelers draft here in the 7th round, 232nd pick overall. Defensive lineman out of Nebraska, Carlos Davis is the pick. I'm going to be very brief with this one. 6'2", 313, 32-inch arms. Ran a 4.82 40 at the combine, which gained the attention of a lot of people that didn't watch the tape. Him and his brother were both athletically gifted. Let me just tell you, you got the lesser of the two twins. Khalil Davis is much more talented than that of Carlos Davis. 4.5 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 1 forced fumble, 3 pass breakups in 2019, 14 tackles for loss, 9.5 of which were sacks, 1 forced fumble, 8 pass breakups in his career. Big time track athlete in background. He was a discus and a shot put thrower. Even in college at Nebraska, he continued to do that. So there's that on his resume. But when I watched this guy, I'm so not impressed. Like, there were so many other guys that I thought you could have selected in the 7th round with this pick that I felt like could come in and help you better than Carlos Davis. Like, this is one of those picks where I scratch my head and say, with the guys available on the board with more talent, you settled for Carlos Davis? Why? I tried to find reasons why they felt like he was the fit here. You know, I tried to make sense of this selection, and I really couldn't. Raekwon Williams out of Michigan State was available at the time of this pick. It ultimately did not get drafted, so it's not like the Steelers were the only team that passed up on Raekwon Williams. The entire league did, but he was better than Carlos Davis. Had you not taken Carlos Davis, I don't think he gets drafted. So Raekwon Williams was a better selection here at this pick. I would have taken Benito Jones. Now, he's got some things that, you know, injuries and things of that nature, but I would have taken Benito Jones in a heartbeat in the 7th round. Way better than Carlos. It's not even close out of Ole Miss. I would have taken his teammate right next to him, Darian Daniels. He jumped off the tape more so than Carlos Davis did. I wanted to know who the hell is this big 70-something next to him, because he's throwing guys out of the bar. So I didn't see it. I saw a guy that gets stuck on blocks a ton, a guy that was getting blown off the football. Every now and again, he'd win, and he'd win with some quickness. He'd get in the backfield and do something, but those were too few and far between. Very unimpressed. I just didn't see it. I did not see it. Like I said, his brother is way better than him. I didn't like this pick at all. In the 7th round, Steelers take Carlos Davis, and for me, it's a 1. I didn't see the value in this pick at all. I thought there were so many better options on the board here at the time of this selection. And in the 7th round, you take guys with, you know, one of about 3 things going in for them. One, they made a positional switch and they're raw, but you see attributes, workable traits that you're excited about, but they just don't have the experience, maybe don't have the production. But you say, look, guys only been playing this position for 1 or 2 years. We think we can get the most out of them. So you take that guy. You take a guy with some red flags, some character concerns, but the guy's uber talented. All right. And so you take that guy in the 7th round, or you take a guy with an injury history. But look, this guy's stupid talented, but he's just been injured a ton, and it's a low risk, high reward type of proposition in the 7th round. This is not what you do. You don't take Carlos Davis in the 7th round. But in any event, I thought it was a really quality draft put forth by the Pittsburgh Steelers. 6 picks in all for the Steelers, 18 total when you tally up all the scores for each draft pick, which nets you a 3 overall, which in the grading scale, if you look in the description, is a B-. So really solid draft. You add in getting Minkah Fitzpatrick, and it probably bumps you up to a B+, knowing that you're getting a guy still relatively in the meat of his rookie contract that's playing at that kind of level. You got to feel good about spending that 1st round pick on Minkah Fitzpatrick, essentially. But that's the Steelers draft in a nutshell. Really solid draft by the Steelers. Thought they attacked some needs that they needed to address. Thought they could have added a tackle at some point in this draft, but they didn't. That's fine. If they feel good about the guys that they have, maybe you address that need next year in the offseason. But in any event, that's the Pittsburgh Steelers draft. Make sure you like this video, subscribe to the Louie T Network for more great content. Make sure you follow me on Twitter at Louie T Network or on IG Louie T Network _ there. And so if it's not your man T, it's not the best NFL coverage it could be. That's the Pittsburgh Steelers draft wrap-up series here on the Louie T Network. I'll see you guys next time. Make sure you stay tuned for the rest of the series. Have a good one.